And we're live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our April 27th, 2021 public board meeting. And we are going to call the meeting to order, and it is 7:04. If everybody will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The reading of the meeting notice. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the open meeting session that the Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 5th, 2021. The meeting set forth the schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedar Grove Times, the Star Ledger, the Township of Verona, and the VEA. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. The Verona Board of Education operates under a consent agenda format. Any board member has the right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public and the press. Mr. Turner, do you want to do the roll call, please?
Mr. Allward.
Here.
Mrs. Jaffe.
Here.
Mr. Day.
Here.
Mrs. Prisco.
Here.
And Mrs. Freshy.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And tonight, we do have a presentation. We have the 2021-2022 annual budget presentation. So I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Zanisio.
Thank you, Mrs. Fresky. Good evening, everyone. Just give me one moment. I'm going to go into presentation mode here where Mr. Turner and I will do the annual budget presentation. This will build upon the presentation that we did at the last public meeting on April 13th. So I would encourage people, if you have not seen that presentation already and it's of interest, that presentation is posted up on the district website. And I encourage people to go there and preview it. Okay, so good evening again. The first several slides that we have, first 7 or 8 slides is a repetition from the April 13th meeting. So we'll just give a general overview of each of those slides. As I mentioned earlier, anyone who would like to watch that presentation in more depth, we encourage you to go to the district website to watch the video of that presentation, and the slide deck is up there as well. The first slide that we have here is just a timeline of the course of the year and what it generally looks and how we go about getting to this point. A lot of work goes into the development of an annual budget with all of the constraints that are imposed upon school districts in an effort to make sure that we're being efficient and resourceful with taxpayer funds. And there are a number of constraints, not the least that 2% cap on budget growth on tax levy, which keeps the tax increases limited to the 2%. Obviously, in the past, we've discussed the impact to the cumulative loss in state aid in excess of $6 million, and the fact that Verona taxpayers fund 95% of the funding for our schools does come from the local taxpayer, and that varies by municipality based on socioeconomics, DFG, and how much state aid comes into those communities. We've spent a lot of time coming up with creative ways to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible with taxpayer dollars in order to maximize how those dollars can be utilized here in district. And there are a lot of levers to that. Leasing, financing for technology purchases, maintaining and reducing out-of-district placements when appropriate and when possible, and bolstering, utilizing that funding to bolster our special education programming here at home for our students. The impact of retirements and resignations each year, how much state aid we end up receiving, And then just taking a good, long, hard look at how we're spending money, and in any given year, are there more efficient ways to be able to do that? So that way we can repurpose funding into different areas based on our needs. And then benefiting from when we do have lower healthcare premium increases. Now, I know that that sounds like a funny statement there, lower healthcare premium increases. Healthcare premiums go up every year. We just hope that they're lower this year than they were last year. So it's less of an impact to the school budget. Just a few points of being very pleased with where we are this year, points of pride. We were able to maintain all of our current staffing positions that we have. Any staff member who's on board right now, we're able to maintain them for next year. So that's a huge win for us, especially in with the volatility that we had this year. In an effort to continue to impact and influence and support mental health and social emotional learning, we're able to increase our current part-time social worker from 70% to 100%. We are able to reinstate our Verona High School assistant band director that we had to reduce last year based on the budget process. We had a resignation in that position, the change in the schedule. We wanted to make sure that we had that built in this year. So we're going to be actively recruiting candidates for that position. And that's something that's very important for our arts department. And we're reinstated go back there. We reinstated the director of facilities role. We currently have Mr. Higgins operating in that interim role, and we will be filling that as a permanent position moving forward. The district's benefited from savings of about $450,000 over the past several years, but it's an opportunity for us to be able to build in that permanent role with the needs that we have in the district and that the budget can now support. We eliminated the HIB specialist. That was due to a resignation several months ago. We've repurposed the responsibilities back to our school counselors and child study team members at the elementary schools. That was in existence up to 2 years ago when we did create this position. And for budget purposes, we decided not to fill that position at the time being, to be able to make sure that we did not have to go and reduce our staffing in other areas. We're maintaining all of our school and curriculum instruction and assessment accounts. We're able to maintain all of our district and school stipend positions. We've allocated more money into substitute pay. There's been a dramatic increase in the cost for substitutes and the volume of substitutes that we've needed. And we've also increased the pay for our lunch aides. Over the past several years, we've been trying to make a commitment to increase that hourly rate. We've done so again this year in order to be able to not only pay people accordingly, what we feel is more appropriate and fair, but also to be able to recruit more people to help support our work. And a huge help has been the recent allocation and of the ESSER funds. This is essentially the CARES Act that is due to coronavirus coming from the federal government, finding its way to the state, and then being allocated to each of the school districts. So this is a huge help for us because it allows us to offset a lot of the costs going into next year around dealing with the pandemic, and allows us as well to help absorb some of the costs this year. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Turner for the next several slides, starting with the budget facts based on the tax levy increase.
Okay, good evening, everyone. All right, the budget facts. The general fund tax levy increase is 2% compared to the prior year. That 2% is the maximum amount that the district can go up without the availability of any extensions for healthcare costs or enrollment costs, which Verona was not eligible for this year. And in addition, there was no bank cap available for use this year as well, too. So the maximum that the district could go up on the tax levy was the 2%, and that is what is being presented this evening. The tax increase is approximately $293 per average household in the town, and that $293 now takes into account all the debt service that's involved with the new debt that the district has incurred due to the referendum, and then also a separate proposal that was passed a couple of years ago. So now this increase now takes into account that all of that debt, that new debt, is online and is now involved with the increase in the tax levy. The 2020 average assessed home is $430,700. All right, so whatever your assessed home is, you can do sort of a comparison as to what your individual tax increase might be using this as a guideline. And the average school tax paid by residents last year was $7,213, which is somewhat reasonable compared to districts that are similar demographics as well too. And the tax rates per $100 of assessed valuation is $1.67 for the school portion of your tax levy. Because remember, on your real estate taxes, there you have your municipality, you have your county, you have all of a number of different assessments that make up your total tax bill. One portion is the school portion, and this is the school portion of your tax bill. Okay. The 2021-2022 revenue budget is $38,148,540. Of that, the local taxes make up 93.4% of the total revenues for the district. State aid makes up 6.02% of the total revenues for the district. And then miscellaneous revenue makes up 0.58% of your revenue budget for next year. And then here's a little historical background chart here showing the state aid that Verona has received now going back to 2009. And you can see it varies quite a bit. And as those of you who remember back then, we were in the midst of coming up with a new state aid funding formula for all school districts within the state of New Jersey. And the state Supreme Court actually wound up instituting what's known as the School Finance and Reform Act. And even though that law was passed a number of years ago, before it was implemented, they maintained state aid basically at the same amount for a number of years. And it's only been within the past few years now that the full funding formula is being phased in, and it will continue to be phased in over the next few years until it's fully implemented. So what that means for Verona is that we actually received an increase in state aid, and it was calculated on the special ed portion of it. But now with the enrollment that we have and the conditions of the students that are in the district, we'll actually start to receive more and more the funding that is in accordance with the School Financing and Reform Act. They call it SIFRA for short. So you will continue to see that in the next few years until it's fully implemented. So I think that actually bodes well for Verona, as it seems as though it's trending with additional state aid for the district, which is certainly welcome. The next slide is a revenue comparison. So the 2021-2022 budget being presented tonight is compared to last year's adopted budget. So you can see the tax levy is increased by 2%. That equates to a dollar amount of $698,709. State aid, the anticipated state aid actually is going up 8.81%. Tuition revenue is basically staying about the same, and that is revenue for students that are attending in-district programs. All right, miscellaneous revenue, again, that's just an estimate and is approximately the same going forward. Budgeted fund balance, there was a decrease in the budgeted available fund balance as some of the prior years' excess surplus was used to fund the capital and maintenance reserves. So it reduced the amount of the excess surplus because we felt that would be appropriate for the 21-22 year. And then you can see that in the withdrawal from capital reserve and maintenance reserve, this year it's zero for both of those. All right, where in the prior year it was for capital reserve, it was $456,381, and in maintenance it was $150,000. We felt as though we didn't need to take any further withdrawals from reserves, you know, as we continue to come to the conclusion of the referendum as well too. And we feel that there was adequate money to complete the referendum. The next slide is a pie chart of the expenses or the expenditures that we're anticipating for next year. And you can see the vast majority of it is salaries and benefits. And that's typical for public school districts and how what their operating expenses, the majority of their operating expenses tend to be. Then you have special education, you have non-discretionary and discretionary spending. All right, and on a future slide, it'll detail exactly what the discretionary and non-discretionary are comprised of. All right, the next slide is a 5-year summary showing how the changes have occurred within the district, and you can see that in salaries. All right, that we're actually looking at a decrease in 21-22 compared to 2021, and the reason for that is because of retirements and resignations and replacements that came in at lower salaries than those people who had left before them. All right, because as Dr. Dionisio had mentioned, there's no reduction in staffing, and so as a result, this reduction in salaries is because of people either retiring or leaving and new hires coming in at a lower salary. The benefits, again, we're looking at an increase of just about 3%. And that is actually very favorable. I'm sure you remember the years when it was 8, 9, 10%. So this is very favorable for the district. Special education costs are up about 6.19%. And then non-discretionary is down 0.03%, and discretionary is up 7.64%. Okay. Benefit costs, as you can see, the cost of a health benefit plan includes health, dental, and vision. The family cost is $33,468. Husband and wife, $28,292. Parent and child, $19,473. Single coverage is $12,801. 179 staff benefit cost, $4,627,176, less employee contribution of $950,000. So as you remember, there's the employee health benefit contribution that all employees must participate in, and that subsidizes the cost of the health benefit premiums that the district incurs. 94 staff members opt out, and the cost to them for the waivers is $470,000. Social Security, pension, and unemployment costs are approximately $945,000. Workers' compensation insurance costs approximately $233,075, and board liability and property insurance costs approximately $265,000. Okay. And then the next slide is the detail of what makes up the discretionary and the non-discretionary spending. Okay, that concludes my portion.
So on the shared services part, we do a lot to try to keep costs down and to benefit from pooling the purchases. So one of the things that we do, we're fortunate to have a wonderful partnership with the township in regards to the public works and taking care of snow removal, our parking lots, and helping us tremendously with landscaping. In turn, we also then have issue here. Just give me 1 second. I don't know what happened there. We'll do this again. I apologize. So we have the relationship with our township where the town takes care of snow removal at our schools and assists our maintenance staff tremendously. Trash removal and recycling. We, with other school districts, we pool health, dental, workman's comp, and liability insurance with a number of other districts, and being able to do that with them keeps those costs low as well as the purchases of supplies, custodial supplies in our partnership, and then looking at the needs with other school districts to make sure from a special education standpoint that we can end up being able to share costs and share services as needed. The next several slides will just provide a level of detail around elementary, middle school, and high school around some of the initiatives that the school budget continues to fund. Some of these are sustained major projects tied to our strategic plan, while others are new that have been incorporated. And we're very proud of this work because, as I mentioned, it stems from the strategic plan, which was collaboratively developed with a community of stakeholders. And it's really the result of the tremendous work that's going on with our teachers and our administrators and all of our support staff in partnership with our parents, which all benefit our students. So you see that we continue to sustain the reading and writing workshop at the elementary schools, continuing to revise the English language arts curricula, working with Dr. Joe Goebel in regards to professional development with our world language teachers. We've been doing that for several years. Our math series, Dimensions, we've been working on that staff development with Mr. Bill Jackson for several years around providing that necessary professional development, building that up at the younger ages, as then we prepare to be able to move this effort and initiative and this type of teaching that benefits our students at the middle school level. The inquiry-based science program has been several years implemented now across our elementary and middle school up through grade 8, being able to provide that inquiry-based foundation. So continuing to sustain that with the STC curriculum. The constant revision of our report cards, the support of our academic literacy coaches that are shared amongst our elementary schools. And then new this year is utilizing the MAP growth assessments for formative assessment to be able to get real-time information so that way we can then process that, analyze it, and then be able to utilize that information in order to best benefit our children. At HBW, continuing with the reading and writing workshop, focus on balanced literacy, professional development there with Ms. Clark, continuing to support the classroom libraries, cross-curricular initiatives, and then once again, the continuation of Dr. Goebel at HBW around professional development and building community with our world language teachers. Dimensions in grade 5, bringing that dimensions work from the elementary math curriculum up into the middle school, continuing with the STC inquiry-based science program, and most recently, our initiative and focus on making sure that we're infusing LGBTQ plus curriculum into the social studies units and making sure that we're supporting those students and supporting all of our students and building education and awareness for everyone as we continue to build our cohesive community. And then last but not least, also implementing the MAP growth assessments for math and ELA, that formative assessment piece that will end up supporting our professional learning communities. In Verona High School, doing the close reading professional development through our humanities department. This year as well was we implemented in English 4 a new course called Race, Culture, and Identity. We're incorporating more works from texts with Black and African American writers, both fiction and nonfiction, within our senior level English class. The district has plans to continue to expand upon that work year over year and being able to bring in diverse course offerings for our students. And hats off to our high school administration, our curriculum office, and to our English teachers for implementing those texts and that work, and for the work that they will continue to do on that important endeavor. Cross-curricular work across English, language arts, and social studies, inquiry-based science work. Dr. Joe Goebel, of course, working across our whole district with our language teachers. Mr. Jackson working with our STEM supervisors and with our STEM teachers, taking a look at making sure that we're continuing to infuse work in our music, AP Music Theory courses. And then every year we revise curricula and we add new courses. So this is just a constant evolution and part of what our team does as we continue to examine what's necessary moving forward. On the special education, special services plan that you see before you, we have 3 columns. We have our program continuity that you could see. I won't read through all of it. It's self-explanatory. Programs that we're continuing to maintain. Then you see the column in the middle about our additional services that are provided as levels of support in order to be able to provide that level. I will draw everyone's attention to about halfway down the middle column, that critically important piece of implementation around the ACE counselor. And that's all around that social emotional learning piece to provide that support for our students. And I know the board remembers it wasn't that long ago. We didn't have elementary counseling at all in this district. And that's something that our teachers, our parents, and our principals had been asking for a long time. And we made a commitment to that. Once we did the second question, we were able to repurpose our funding. And then we've continued to build upon that as well. So that's something that we're very proud of, and our students will benefit from that. You see also our partnership with Effective School Solutions. That's that mental health, social emotional learning component in grades 5 through 12 around that second proposal from 2018. And then in the last column on the right, you see there where we've expanded the social worker at the elementary schools, our continued focus on mental health. Mr. Moriello is working with the team on a wellness series and a community-based mental health speaker series that will be available for our community. So those plans will be developed and they'll be communicated out when those sessions will be in order to be able to provide additional support around that social emotional learning component. So this slide here is an important one and just piggybacks off of what Mr. Turner was mentioning earlier around the cost. Several slides ago, he referenced the $1.67 on the school side and approximately $7,200 on the school tax side and what it costs per household. This is a really wonderful chart that we include every single year because we break it down into these 4 columns, and the first 3 are really around what the dollars are compared to, and we're comparing ourselves to our comp group. And our comp group are K through 12 school districts that are less than 3,000 students. It's between 1,800 and 3,500 students, more or less. And this is defined by the state. And in the northern region, because costs in the northern region, Morris, Union, Essex, Bergen County, are similar. We really shouldn't be comparing ourselves to like Cumberland County and Cape May County, very different parts of the state. But it gives you a benchmark here as to how we're doing on the financial side. And then you can see all of the work from a curriculum instruction and assessment standpoint and the services and the opportunities we provide our students as a community. And you get to see that, our costs are being maintained low, comparably speaking, to our comp group. And why these 3 columns have been used in Verona for years, that these are the costs that actually impact kids directly, right? It's that, what's the per pupil cost? What is classroom supplies? That gets into the kids, into the teacher's hands. And what are the extracurricular costs? And, I would argue that we want to keep, and we do, if you look back in prior years, we do keep putting more money into these areas. But relatively speaking, we are always staying fiscally responsible. And then you get to see that the average property taxes in Verona are relatively low as well for what we provide as a community. So this is just a good benchmark because we know that taxes, inevitably, they always go up. They never go down. But it's also important to understand what the value is that everyone is getting and that it's being managed financially prudently. And then a really great thing is normally we end on a high note. I think this whole presentation is a high note. We end on a high note with the college acceptances. And in prior years, we've been putting it all on one slide. And unfortunately, we couldn't fit it on one slide. So now we have it on 2 slides. That's how many schools our students are applying to. They're getting accepted to. They have a lot of wonderful choices. And we wanted to reflect that here so that way the board and the community could see it. So that concludes the budget presentation for this year. I will turn it over to the board if you have any questions or comments for either Mr. Turner, myself, or Mr. Moriello or Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Dionisio, and thank you, Mr. Turner. I know the amount of work that goes into creating the budget and putting it together, and the committee work and the up and down and input from the administrators and the principals in each of the buildings. So I appreciate the work that goes into it, and that we're, right at the 2% cap is nice, very nice. I don't have any questions. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. First, I just want to thank Mr. Turner and Dr. Dionisio for your work on this, especially during this year, doing some of it, if not a lot of it, virtually. I can't imagine how difficult this was. But thank you for the budget. It looks great. And again, like you said, just to echo, is, fiscally responsible. So thank you for that. The one question I just want to make sure that I understand, Mr. Turner, that average increase per household. I just want to make sure I understand this right. So that 293 includes the second question increases? Okay. Okay. Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
If you want to use it as an interpreter, you're muted right now. If you could unmute yourself so the public can hear the response.
Thank you.
Yeah, and and this is generally for everybody, but if you take what your assessed valuation is of your particular home in Verona, divide it by 100 and multiply it times $1.67, that's what your school tax is going to be. It's as simple as that. All right, the example that we used, and that 293 was that $430,000 house that may or may not even exist in Verona, but that was what was used as an example.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. I also want to thank you in particular for the way that you explained all of this before during the presentation. Every time that I sit with you on Finance Committee, or at any time you're explaining things to me, I feel like I have a very, very good understanding coming out of it, and you never judge me for asking silly questions. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No silly
No such
questions
thing
on
as a silly
finance, that's for sure.
Right, the only silly question is the one that's unasked.
All right. But
Does
thank you.
anybody else have any comments or questions on the budget?
Mrs. Freshy, I'd just like to also add to Mr. Turner as well. I do think being in the assessor's office, as what my day job is, that was very informative as well, because it's 53% of our tax dollars goes to the school. So to see it broken down like that, and then to see us in our comp districts as well on the lower end, because we are always hearing, well, I'm always hearing, from owners that our taxes are high, and then, we are Essex County, we are in a high area, we are in New Jersey, but to see that, it's nice to see that we are on the low end. So thank you for putting that together. And if anyone has questions about their taxes, they could always call my office.
I'm sure that-
Yeah.
I've called her a few times.
You have.
So, but I just want to chime in real quick too. I know, this year started off, in the COVID world, we were worried about, budgets, dollars, PPE, all these things we hadn't really thought about before. And, we were concerned about where we were going to be at the end of the year. And I'm happy to see that we're actually, between some of the funding and we got from the state and fiscal responsibility and things we've done, we're able to actually add some staff and increase with the facilities or social worker, things like that. So, end of the day, I think you've done a wonderful job along with the administration to get us where we are, to be able to say that any increase is still an increase, but we've been able to control it and be versus our comparable districts, we're doing very well. So again, I want to thank you for that. And again, I'm glad to see that we in the beginning of the year we weren't sure we were going to be, and now we know we're in a pretty good place at this point. But it'll do better. But end of the day, we're doing well. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Turner, and he's worked around the clock on this budget every year. Last year, it's been it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time, a lot of collaboration. But your wealth of experience and your bedside manner, your approach with everyone, and the questions that you ask, and being able to take their feedback and then coming to me with potential solutions, and for us to be able to work collaboratively together to be able to put this forward. It took a lot of time, and just want to thank you for your efforts. Does not go unnoticed.
Thank you very much. And if I could just mention that, I just consider myself one member of a part of a bigger team. And I want to thank the rest of the team, because without that teamwork and everybody coming together, it would be impossible to put together a school budget under these circumstances. So, I was just happy to be a member of a really good team.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go into the superintendent reports. I'm going to give it back to you, Dr. Dionisio.
Great, thank you very much. I know we have a few committee reports tonight. So the only item that I have this evening is just in reference to a resolution, which is resolution number 6, that the board approve the attached revised 2020-21 district school calendar. The only revision on that, and it will be posted on the website, is just noting that at the bottom of the calendar, there are only 2 emergency snow days, not 3. So as a result, we are just approving the calendar. There are no dates that are changing on the calendar. And there are no give backs on snow days this year because we've used 2 snow days, and that's all that was built into the calendar. So that's all I have on the superintendent report at this time.
Is that resolution number 6 or 7?
Number 6.
Number 6.
Dr. Dionisio, can I just ask a question
Not on the addenda, on the original.
on the calendar real quick?
Yes.
I noticed on June 24th, HBW is having their move up. So is there going to be on a different day? Because normally, because of Caldwell, we had Caldwell University, they would be in the morning and then high school would be on the Friday.
So they're still working out those details, but yes, that's something that they're looking at and doing it the day before.
Okay.
In prior years, obviously, for the past, 10 years or so, we've been at Caldwell University, which has kind of normalized like being able to allow everybody in for promotion and graduation and not worrying about the weather and being able to have AV technology. In prior years, you'd be able to do it on the field. And then if it rained, you kind of could bring some people inside. But with COVID this year, that's not going to be possible. So managing 2 programs in one day, a graduation and a promotion, seems like a lot. We cannot graduate any day earlier because students have to complete 180 school days. But a promotion ceremony is exactly that. It's symbolic, it's a ceremony. So we could do that a day earlier. And that's what the thought is on being able to just more effectively manage it. So more details will be coming out once we finalize all of those details. You're welcome.
As far as committee reports, Finance Committee did meet. Mrs. Jaffe, do you want to jump in with finance?
Thank you, Mrs. Fresky. We did meet. We talked about the budget presentation. We discussed the school board administrator position and the process surrounding that. And we also talked about legal fees and reviewed them quite in depth. And, between COVID and referendum, our legal fees this year were quite high, significantly higher than the year prior. Outside of that, another thing that we discussed with our legal fees was our grievance and labor relation matters. And really over the past 3 years, what we found is that those legal fees are upwards of $55,000. So, that is something that I think we need to look at more closely and really try to kind of rein in going forward, but I see, overall, we also talked about, going forward in terms of legal fee costs, referendums winding down and, God willing, COVID is also winding down. So that will hopefully change as well. So, and that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Jaffe. Yeah, it was a pretty benign conversation, and it did focus mostly around the budget presentation. So thank you for reporting out on that. Does any of the board members have any questions on finance? If not, we will go into community resources. We met as well. Mr. Day, do you want to take that?
I will, I'm just making sure I'm unmuted. I am unmuted. So yes, I want to talk briefly about our meeting. School reopening, good news. The schools are open, which they've been open, but now we have kids in the schools and students in the schools. So the school reopening plan at the elementary level is one cohort every day until lunch, and then remote learning in the afternoon. I think 95% of the students are participating on, in-school learning, which is great. So with HBW, we've moved from 3 cohorts down to 2 cohorts. So the students are in the building until lunch, and then they have remote learning in the afternoon. And then with VHS, we're continuing with 2 cohorts all day with open campus for lunch, and that began on April 22nd, at the start of marking period 4. So great news. I know the parents that I've talked to, very happy to have the kids back in school, students back in school, and getting closer to normal. For additional items we talked about, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, some additional meetings are being scheduled for May and June, and staff development is scheduled for the summer of 2021. In regards to the Board of Ed and VEA mediation, for the past few months, we had a couple sessions that were very positive prior, and then we had tried to reschedule, like I said, for the past couple months, and we've not been able to get a date. Every time we put dates out there, the VEA is not available. So I believe tonight they might have had some a break where we might have a date where we can actually meet. So again, that will be a work in progress. But again, we as the Board of Ed would love to sit down and have that open communication with the VEA members, and whether it's one member or all the members. Our goal is to have that open communication and pipeline to be able to sort out and address any questions or any items that are out there that we need to discuss and address. So that's about all we have for the meeting. Anything else, Lisa, to add?
Yeah, the only other thing that I'm going to add is we spoke about the Verona Public School Magazine publication, and that had started a couple of years ago, and it was really well received. The students have a lot of input as far as writing articles, and the graphics art teacher and the graphics design students do the covers and the work. So it really is a great experiential hands-on project for the school. And that got halted last year with COVID. So we are back up and running. So that magazine will come out this year. So that's really good news. And the other thing, we had put a board retreat for us back last February or March. And just as we were going to, our date was coming up, it got closed down for COVID. So that is something that we are trying to work on, just to step away from our roles here a little bit and have an outside, totally neutral, fun thing to do for all of us. And so I'm working on getting a date. So we're looking somewhere towards the end of May or early June to get a board retreat on the calendar. Other than that, I think we covered it all. Does anybody have any questions for community resources? Nope. So if not, at this point, we're going to open to public comments on agenda action items only.
Mrs. Freshy, before we start, I just have some athletics. We didn't have a meeting, but I do have some things to report out. If I can report out before we go to
Absolutely.
that, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So our volleyball team won North 2 Group 1 sectional championships, first Lyndhurst last week. This is the 4th championship they've had in 5 past seasons. So congratulations to those girls. Fantastic job. It was great to watch. Our wrestling team, Johnny Pavia, Derek Bernardino, Jaden Chupak, and Dean Palmer qualified for the regionals. And Jaden took 6th place overall. Dean also had his 100th win, which I think we reported at our last meeting. Spring sports are up and running. Opening day was fantastic up here. It was a sight. It was great. There was people everywhere, masks, everyone was doing what they were supposed to do, but baseball, softball, golf, and boys and girls lacrosse all won on opening day. And the baseball game, there was over 24 Major League Baseball scouts here for Pierce Capola. Very unbelievable to say, just really cool. So congratulations to all those athletes. And also on the boys lacrosse team, Jack Lonsinger scored his 100th goal. So congratulations to him. And thank you to Mr. Merkler for giving us always great updates and keeping us informed.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Prisco. That was like all, yeah, good news. Good news. Excellent. Congratulations to all our athletes. We are going to go to public comments, and that's on agenda action items only. And to remind the public to please state your name and your address and to limit your comments to 5 minutes. And I'm going to ask Mr. Roberts to please do the answering of those hand raises.
The Mueller.
Hey, good evening. Ron Mueller, 21 Linden Avenue. Just wanted to say, as a University of Alabama alumni, to all those going to Alabama, roll tide, go Bama. Very happy to see that they were on the list, but it's not necessarily my question. My question is in regards to the budget. One question I just had real quick, just so I understand. You showed that there was a increase in state aid from 2021, 2022, but it didn't look like it accounted for the additional aid that was given during the pandemic times, right? I just wanted to fully understand that because I know there was like an additional $400,000 or $600,000 that was given there. So could you just explain that to me just so I fully understand where that's coming from or if that's included in that state aid? Thank you very much.
Mr. Turner is going to unmute and take that question.
Okay, there we go. Okay. That was a very good question. Basically, the state aid as reported in the budget presentation is the regular state aid, the categorical aids that the district receives. The other grant money that the district received, the ESSER monies and the coronavirus relief fund, those funds are federal monies that are accounted for in the special revenue budget and has no effect whatsoever on the district's tax levy. So that's accounted for in a whole separate fund and was not part of the state revenue that was reported on the presentation that we just gave.
Mr. Turner, can I just ask a follow-up? So can you maybe just briefly also explain what the state aid can be used for in terms of our budget and what the ESSER funding can be used for and how those are different?
Yeah, am I still unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Yeah, the regular state aid is revenue that's generally used for the purposes of supporting the school district budget, the general operating budget. All right, the grant monies, the ESSER monies, the coronavirus relief fund monies, those grants are accounted for in the special revenue fund and have a very narrow, we have a very narrow ability to use those funds, usually a very specific purpose that we can use them for. And those additional monies were basically associated with the coronavirus pandemic, and that could not be used to support the general operating budget of the school district.
And I will just add to that as well. In the budget presentation this evening and in the last budget presentation, I believe it maybe slide 7 actually lists not all, but there are about 15 different categories that ESSER funds can be utilized. It's on the state website, it's also on the federal website, the U.S. Department of Education site. So we listed a smattering of them that the public would connect to and relate to. So if anybody wanted to see what that funding could be used for, it's specifically earmarked for those purposes.
And with that, I show no further public comment on action items.
Okay, then we will continue with our agenda. And are there any old or new business for discussion items at the board we want to bring up at this time?
I just wanted to Thank the teachers for their continued flexibility as we changed schedules again this marking period. And in particular, thank the elementary teachers for a very, very smooth transition back into 5 days. I can speak from personal experience. My kids transitioned back in very smoothly. So thank you to their teachers, in particular, Mrs. Keepers and Ms. Diaz. And from what I can hear from a lot of people that I know of elementary students, that it has really, really been a wonderful transition and the kids are doing very, very well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Drappi. So if there's no more discussion, we are going to do our roll call on resolutions. I need a motion to approve resolutions number 1 through 13.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Day
Second.
and second by Mrs. Prisco. Is there any questions or discussion on any of the resolutions? No? So I will ask Mr. Turner to please call the roll to vote on those.
Mr. Hallward,
Yes.
Mrs. Drappi,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes.
and Mrs. Kretschy.
Yes,
The motion's passed.
thank you very much. And we do have addendum resolutions at this point.
Mrs. Fresky, I have part of a superintendent update, just a piggyback. Can I, before we do addenda resolutions, can I just give an update to the public and to the board?
Absolutely. Let me go back on mute.
So this was mentioned earlier by Mrs. Drappi, we talking about our business administrator search. We've been searching for a business administrator for quite some time, and we've done an exhaustive search. We had the deadline, the position was posted back in the fall. We had a deadline that was the end of December. The district had 26 applicants for the position. We screened all of the applicants. We interviewed what we believed the profiles that fit our district needs. We interviewed the top 9 candidates, and then we narrowed that down to a second round of interviews where we had 8 candidates. We then had subsequent interviews with 3 subcommittees with administrators and staff from our buildings, including administrators and administrative assistants and our central office administrative assistant staff. And then we had subsequent interviews as well. And then there was even narrowed down ultimately to the 2 top finalists. And then there was an interview from a board secretary capacity of these candidates with the full board. Then there were follow-up interviews with myself before a recommendation could be made, and reference checks on the candidates. And then ultimately leading us up to the point where we are this evening. And I am pleased that today we were able to finalize the details with the successful finalist. And I'm pleased to announce that on addenda resolution number 1 this evening, the recommendation for appointment of our new school business administrator, Mr. Jorge Cruz. Mr. Jorge Cruz will be joining our team in July. On July 1st is our goal. Mr. Cruz comes to us with over 13 years of experience in school finance and operations. He prides himself on being a strategic forward thinker and collaborative team member. Mr. Cruz demonstrated successful development of systems to support schools on how to best utilize budgeting to maximize the instructional program. His experience includes oversight of school budgets to support more than 1,500 schools currently in the New York City Department of Education. In his current role, Mr. Cruz manages Community School District number 6, which is located in Washington Heights, New York City. That network of schools consists of 39 schools, pre-K through grade 12, almost 15,000 students, and a total operating budget of over $230 million. By comparison's sake, our budget is approximately $35 million. Mr. Cruz comes to us also with knowledge and application on supporting curriculum initiatives, specifically his knowledge in working to support STEM programming, where he most recently leveraged private grants and public funds to expand district-wide implementation. Prior to his service in the New York City Department of Education, Mr. Cruz worked as an auditor for Ernst & Young with a focus in the education and the public sector. Mr. Cruz earned his Bachelor's of Business Administration degree in Finance and Investments at Baruch College. He also then followed up and completed his Executive Master's of Public Administration at Baruch College as well. Mr. Cruz currently resides in Teaneck, New Jersey, with his wife Elizabeth and his two daughters, Isabella and Annabelle, 9 and 6 years old, respectively. Outside of work, Mr. Cruz can be seen coaching his daughter's soccer team and cycling with his family. He is very active in his local school community and volunteers as the treasurer for the PTO, just in case he didn't have enough of the business world during the school day. Mr. Cruz also facilitates financial literacy workshops to empower immigrant communities with their personal finances. Mr. Cruz is excited and optimistic about beginning his career with the Verona Public Schools, as I know we all are as well. He's looking forward to meeting our staff and school administrators. And in the coming weeks, we will be setting up transition. So that way, before school gets out, we can have meet and greet and get to all of the buildings with Mr. Cruz. And we're really excited to have him join us as the new school business administrator. So that's addenda resolution number 1. That's on this evening, that we were finally able to get everything completed and wrapped up. So that way we could begin the transition. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Dionisio. Yeah, that's really exciting that we're going to have a permanent person filling the seat and be able to move forward with that. So we need a motion to accept, to approve addenda resolutions number 1 through 6.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Day,
Second,
second by Mrs. Prisco. Is there any discussion on any of the addenda resolutions?
I just have another comment.
Go ahead.
Regarding the resignation of Mrs. Fowler, the guidance counselor at the high school. I'd like to wish her well. Part of me kind of feels like maybe my son Andrew might have pushed her out, because I think every guidance counselor my son Andrew has since he started high school has left Verona.
Way to throw your
But
kid
on
under the
another
bus.
note, no, I really do. She was wonderful to work with, because I did have to work closely with her, especially in the beginning of the year. But I wish her well wherever she is going. But thank you.
That's great.
So
Thank you, Mrs. Prisco.
if I could just piggyback off of Mrs. Prisco, we do wish Mrs. Stober well. She's been fantastic here in her short time. We're sorry to see her leave, but we are excited for her. This year with the pandemic kind of created an opportunity for her to apply for a very exciting program in Scotland. She was accepted into a doctoral program at the University of Edinburgh. So she's going to be pursuing her doctoral degree over the next 4 years. So big life change and something she's very excited about. So we wish her well. So it's exciting for her.
That's awesome.
Yeah, fun.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So, addendum resolution number 5, and then on the agenda, resolution number.
Yeah, so it looks like it's. Oh, I see, change order 3001.
Sorry, you're muted.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Am I still muted? No. Gosh, all right. Really though? Come on. How many meetings do I have to go through so I can get this right? So what I said was the on addenda, the resolution number 13, and on the addendum, resolution number 5. I see that they are different change orders for the same amount, right? So it's change order 3001 for additional roof work at all schools. And it's 102,515, and then change order number 002 for all the schools. What's going on there? You're muted. You're muted, Lisa. Good Lord.
I was going to say, it references the original contract amount, which
Yes.
is the 6,200,000. And then it says previous change order, which is referendum number 13.
Okay. I
And
see
then it
that
has
now.
the new change order, which is the 002.
So there's two, okay, so there's 2 change orders to this scope of work. Can someone briefly explain what that's?
I think we have Mr. O'Brien is on the call.
Oh,
So
super.
he could speak to, so from the finance side of things, Mr. Turner can speak to it, but Mr. O'Brien, Can you please just provide an update? I know we've talked about this, but just for clarity's sake, because the resolution is on for this change order for an increase and what that's for. So could you provide some context for the board on that?
Yes, the change orders in regards to the original referendum work with the roof work at both HBW and the elementary schools. At the time of those contracts being awarded, the HVAC there was plans to have the HVAC going at the time this past summer. So that work got completed with the HVAC on hold. So we actually pulled that work back from those contractors at the time and got credits back. And now with the new HVAC project starting up, we now had to go back out and get that work done that's in regards to the new HVAC. So that's what that change order was. We at the time of the contract with the HVAC contractor, he's the HVAC contractor, so did not put the roofing work in his scope until we can review it and make sure that all the documents and the pricing was correct. So then we decided to give them the change order based on the work. The same roofer who was in the district last year they'll be using, so we can carry over the warranties and have no issue.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
President, may I just make
Yep.
one comment?
Go ahead, Mr. Turner.
All right. I just want to say that in relation to this with the change orders and all too, a lot of work was done with Mr. O'Brien to make sure that any and all financial changes of this type that come along stay within the confines and the spirit of the original referendum. All right. So you might be seeing a change order increasing the contract, but there are other factors involved to make sure that everything balances out so as not to overspend the referendum. And quite a bit of time was put into place here with Mr. O'Brien to ensure that that was the case with these change orders as well.
Are there any other questions before we?
I just had a comment. I was happy to see that Larry Doc Siegel's coming back for another summer.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's a STEM teacher, so he is one of the legendary teachers of Verona that is continues to come back and add value to our program in the summer. So glad to see Doc Siegel coming back. So
Excellent. If there's no other comments or questions, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Turner to call the roll to vote on these resolutions.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mrs. Rafi,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
yes,
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes.
and Mrs. Fresh.
Yes.
The motion's passed.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And at this point, we can open up to public comment on any topics. So I'm going to ask the public, as usual, to please state your name, your address, and comments are limited to 5 minutes. If you could do your questions up front, and then they will be answered in that order. And I'm going to ask Mr. Roberts to please
Sure thing.
moderate that. Thank you.
There's no hands at this time.
There are no hands up for public comment, so we are going to adjourn the meeting. Before we call to adjourn, I am just going to say that our next public meeting is Tuesday, May 11th, and it's going to begin with confidential session at 5:30 and public session at 7 p.m. And with school being back in and everybody being back in, we are going to shift our format from Zoom to back to in-person board meetings. So the May 11th board meeting will be in the auditorium of Verona High School. And it gives plenty of space for people to be socially distanced, and we can fit quite a bit of people in there. So we look forward to being in person again and seeing people. So with that, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Moved by Mrs. Prisco, second by Mrs. Drappi, and all in favor? Aye. Aye. And that is it. We are adjourned at 8:08. Thank you, everybody, and have an excellent night.